Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Desert Farmer Podcast, episode 52. It's been a couple weeks since we've been here.
It has, yes.
So I had to do some traveling for work, and that's now past me, and I'm working from home almost full time. We'll see.
Days.
Yep, most days. But I had to take the last couple weeks off, but we're back at it. So before we get started today, I want to give you guys a couple of housekeeping notes. So housekeeping note number one would be what?
If you have a question, just write the word question, preferably in caps, before the question. That way it stands out to me and I hopefully don't miss it.
Yes, and Lori will be keeping an eye on the comments. You do a pretty good job of, reading all of them.
Yeah, I may not necessarily comment to all of them or read them aloud just because we're trying to, make sure we stay on topic and get to questions, not just reading what everybody's comments are because everybody can see those.
Right, and more importantly, get to the questions because we want to make sure that this is for you guys. So we want to make sure we answer those questions.
Yeah.
And housekeeping note number 2 or 2.5 or 3, give us a thumbs up. So that helps us not only today, but it helps us as this video goes into the analogs of Edge of Nowhere Farm podcasting. So that helps us out. Okay, so real quick, before we get to the topic of today, we actually have some very big news. Now, we're going to share it with you today, but we're not going to share the details. You guys will have to tune in tomorrow. We have a video that we're posting tomorrow that's going to give you all of the details, including some of the gory details. But what?
We had baby goats.
Yes, we did.
We didn't. Our goats had baby goats.
Yep, our goats had baby goats. So we got some kids on the farm, right?
7 of them.
Yeah, that was shocking. Shocking. So, again, we'll give you guys some of the details tomorrow, but if Lori wants to, she'll work on this now. We'll give you guys a little sneak peek of Violet with her four kiddos. And the video's a little off center. You guys can't quite see it, but you'll see it. The 4th one's actually underneath her. There she is. So, yeah, those are some baby goats right there. So she had 2 bucklings and 2 doelings. And so that was an even split. And they are doing fantastic, right?
They're so cute.
Yeah, so
cute.
You were up with her all night and had those while I was out of town.
Yeah, so she ended up giving birth between 2 and 3:15 in the morning, and so I was out with her all night and helped her, and she did fantastic. So I didn't have to really help much. I just had to catch babies and do a little bit of cleanup for her.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, so Rosie had hers first, and then I was here for that, and then Violet had hers while I was out, and you kind of knew, right, that she was going to drop, and she was the big one, so it was obvious.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so you guys will see details tomorrow. So make sure you guys turn in tomorrow, so you guys can get caught up and see. We actually have video of Rosie giving birth, so you guys will be able to see that if you want to tomorrow. All right. Yep. Any questions in here before we get to the topic of today?
Since we are on the topic of citrus, are you concerned about citrus greening? What steps are you doing to mitigate potential exposure, such as spraying pesticides and so on? So
we won't spray pesticides. And if it hits us, it hits us. That's kind of what it narrows down to. So I don't lose sleep over it. If something happens, it happens. But I'm definitely not going to use chemicals to try to stop that from happening. So, obviously it can. Will it? Maybe. That's a possibility. But we're not going to do anything nothing specific to try to prevent it. So, it's obviously, you probably haven't heard of it, but basically it affects the entire crop in the tree. And basically instead of ripening, the fruit never ripens, basically. But either way, yeah. So no, I don't lose sleep over it. I know, obviously, and I can be a worrier about certain things, but there's some things that I just don't worry about. That's one of them. I know a lot of people ask us about the wood chips and if we're worried about fire. Well, sure. But, we could stay awake all night and worry about fire, but, we put that in the Lord's hands. And if he decides that this all has to go away, I'll be devastated, but it will pick up and move on. So, yeah. What else?
How high do I train my grapes?
That's up to you. So I'm assuming you mean how high do you make the trunk of the vine. So general school of thought and the traditional way of doing that is at the 3-foot height. So you have a 6-foot total trellising. Again, this is traditional. You have about a 6-foot tall trellis, that top wire. We use EMT pipe. And then you have a 3-foot wire. So you train the trunk to the 3-foot wire. And if it's cane pruned, you have a head just below the 3-foot wire. So you can put each year's canes down. Or if you're spur pruning, you have it split into a V somewhere at or below the 3-foot wire. And you train your cordons out to the left and right at that 3-foot level. And then again, your top wire, or again, we use piping, would be at 6 feet. Now, we have a grapevine that we just planted brand new. We planted last weekend, right? Got here really late. It came from a vineyard in New York. It is Blanc du Bois, I believe is what the type variety of grape it is. And it's supposed to be very good for us in warmer weather. So that particular one, we're actually going to be training up to the 6-foot wire. So I did some research on that. And it's a different type of training system. First time we've done it. So this year we'll be training up to the 6-foot wire, and basically it's spur pruned, but up to the 6-foot wire. So the actual spurs will face down as opposed to up. So we've got that will be new for us. We've never done that before, but apparently this particular variety does well that way. So we'll see. Anything else?
Out of 1 to 10, what do you rate the mimosa drink?
Mimosa?
I don't know if I've ever had a mimosa.
I don't think I have either. Isn't a mimosa champagne and orange juice? I'm pretty sure that's a mimosa.
I don't know.
I think it is. And I don't know that I've ever had it either, honestly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know people drink it like for breakfast, but we don't drink alcohol that early in the day. So usually it's afternoon, evening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
What's the drink and or fruit of the day?
No fruit of the day because we don't have any ripe fruit on the farm today.
Well,
so we got.
Mulberries.
Oh, that's true. We could have brought mulberries.
Yeah, I didn't think about it.
Maybe we'll do that next weekend for you guys.
Sorry.
Actually, we won't be here next weekend. Well, we might be here next weekend.
Yeah, we might be.
But either way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could. Drink of the day. What is it?
Well, right now I just have a hard seltzer, and then I'll make a martini, probably a lemon martini after.
Yep.
My go-to.
Mm-hmm. Easy peasy.
Yeah, exactly. How high do I train my grapevine? Sorry, mess the first question up. How high do I train my grapevines?
Yeah. So up to
Hopefully
6.
that answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, he said okay, thank you. So maybe
Okay.
that did answer his question.
Okay. Anything else? Are we good to get going? Get started on the topic of the day?
So I have citrus trees on the west side of my yard that went in the ground last October. Today I hung up a 30% shade cloth to get them tough through the summer. Am I doing more hard than good? Maybe that's more harm than good.
Yes. No need for shade cloth with citrus. So if you think about, so there are 5 states in the United States that can grow citrus commercially. You can grow citrus just about anywhere with, a little bit of extra work, keeping them in pots, bringing them inside in the winter, blah, blah, blah. We're not talking about that. So Arizona is one of those 5 states. So is Florida, so is California, Texas, and I forget what the other one is. It's down in the south somewhere, I believe. Either way, so you're talking about states that are all have a tremendous amount of sunlight. I mean, blasting sunshine. And so does Arizona. In fact, the Arizona sweet varieties of oranges were specifically developed in Arizona as production crops. And so these particular trees have been around for decades and decades, and they never used shade cloths. That wasn't a thing. So that's a brand new concept. And we've covered this a little bit in the past here on our farm. We don't use shade cloth ever. The exception would be our nursery. And so we have our nursery trees in pots. And then, of course, that would be another exception. If you have a tree in a pot, it's going to need some mottled sun. So you might need to use shade cloth or put it underneath another larger tree or something like that, again, because it's in a pot. If they're in the ground, make sure you're using nice heavy mulch. Make sure you're watering like we talk about here. It's obviously already in the ground, so planting late could be a challenge. But other than that, no, they need full sun all day long. So just make sure you're giving them enough irrigation, especially once you get into those hot, dry months. There you go. What else? Anything else? Or are we ready to talk citrus pruning?
Yeah, go ahead and get going.
All right. So this particular topic we had somebody that had emailed talking about a couple different things with their citrus trees. And they hadn't done any pruning, and they were not getting a lot of production. So they asked their gardener to prune the trees back. And it sounds like the gardener basically kind of did a butchering of said citrus trees. So cut it way, way down. And I don't know whether it turned into a lollipop or something similar, but had trimmed it way, way down. And they were very concerned because they had cut it back so far, and they didn't want them to cut it back quite as far. Well, now a year later, new growth is coming out, flowering's coming out. They had their first batch of fruit this past winter, and they said it was fantastic. Not only did the fruit taste amazing, but also they had great production. So they were very surprised because they assumed that they shouldn't be pruning the tree, or if it was pruned too heavy, that it would negatively impact the tree. So that's kind of how this started, and I figured, you know what? We're in the month of April, and at this point for us in Arizona, pruning is generally done. In fact, it should be done for all of your deciduous trees. And generally speaking, you wouldn't be pruning any of your tropical trees if you're going to do that either right now, because they're in full growth mode and setting fruit, getting ready to ripen that fruit. So citrus, because it is an evergreen, just like a tropical tree is, it is going to always be green. It's not going to go into a dormant season like you have with your deciduous trees, like your peach trees and your plum trees, your apricots, your berries, all these other trees, apples, they all drop their leaves in the wintertime, generally speaking, and that's when it signals you that it's time to go ahead and get some pruning done. Now, those particular trees, you can do some summer pruning. So that's very common across most of the country, but we don't do that here any longer, mainly because all of our trees go into kind of a semi-dormancy period during the summer months because it is just too hot and dry for them to put on new growth. In fact, if they try to, and we have a real dry, hot spell, any new growth will basically just fry. So we're challenged because you don't want to prune in the summertime, and it's not beneficial to prune in the wintertime because all of your fruit is ripening. You don't want to be pruning a tree while the fruit is ripening on that tree. So the challenge with citrus is there's a very, very short period of time where you either don't have fruit on the tree, maybe a month or two, or the fruit is very small. So generally speaking, we always prune citrus in the spring. It's about now. So we look for all of the fruit to have set on all of our citrus trees. It's not quite done yet. We still have a few that are in flower and setting fruit, so we still have a few more weeks. But during the month of April and May, so late April, late May, is typically when we do our pruning. And the reason why is you have very, very small fruit, but the production is done. So you have all of your late varieties. Like for us, the grapefruit is the last thing we harvest. We harvest that in the month of March. You can even harvest it into April. That tree is now setting fruit again. And all of our citrus has tiny little citrus on it today. So typically what we'll do is we'll wait until we see those get a little bit larger. We want them to be about the size of a quarter. So some will be a little bit bigger, some will be a little bit smaller, and that's when we do our pruning. So you still have another month or two of nice, solid, strong growth, but you don't have large fruit set on there at this point. And generally speaking, the trees are not stressed because 90 to 100 degrees and dry, these trees love it as long as you're irrigating them well. So timing wise, we prefer spring. Now, that's not to say you can't prune some other time of year. You generally can. If you want to prune during the wintertime, maybe right after harvest, that would be fine. Fall, you could, but realize you have fruit that is now ripening or about to ripen, so not an ideal time frame. So really now is a good time to go ahead and do that. Excuse me for a sec. So the second part of this is how should you prune citrus? And so it's actually Fairly simple. However you want to is the honest answer. So if you guys are here in Arizona and you've driven through, well, there's not very many older parts of town that have a lot of citrus in them anymore. But it used to be, even in Sun City West, they've gotten rid of their citrus. But Sun City West was a good example because they used them in these little notches. They've got walls up on the streets, and these little notches every, 50 to 100 feet, maybe more, would have a citrus tree in it. It was very small, kind of maybe a 4 or 5 foot trunk, and then a little bit of a lollipop bush, and they would trim that back constantly to keep it looking like a lollipop. Even those trees would still set fruit and ripen fruit. Now, it tasted like lemons because they were basically sour oranges, but they would trim them into lollipops, constantly pruning and trimming them, and they would still set and produce fruit. So you can really kind of do anything. Just keep in mind a couple things. Number one, a citrus tree naturally wants to be a bush. It wants to be on the ground, grow up into a nice, big, wide bush. So it is going to try to grow that way. So it's going to try to grow down to the ground, and it's going to try to grow nice and wide, and you may have issues with especially things down on the ground. So we'll want to do that. Number two, your production is going to be on older wood. So your brand new growth can get production on there. But usually your growth from last year is where you're typically going to find a lot of your fruit set, or even older. So you'll notice that with your trees, especially when they're younger. Your fruit will be lower on the tree. As the tree gets taller, you'll have fruit down low and then towards the middle. And again, as it continues to grow, that fruit set is going to continue to grow with it. So one thing to keep in mind, that I always encourage everybody to do, you can let them go natural. Have at it if that's your choice. We prefer to get them close to that. What we typically do here is we will prune up about 2 feet off the ground, maybe sometimes a little bit more depending on the variety, but about 2 to 3 feet off the ground, no more than that, because you want to make sure you're shading your trunk. If you don't, you can get sunburn on the trunk of the tree. Another reason why you always see some of those older orchards, you'll see the trunks painted white. We do that here. You guys know we use the IV Organics 3-in-1 plant guard. In fact, I think we typically do it on ours because we have a problem with rodents chewing on the trunks. But otherwise, sunburn's not a problem for our citrus trees because we let the canopy completely shade that. But we'll prune them up a couple feet. Number one reason for us is we need to make sure we can see under the tree. You know, we've got a farm tour coming up here in a week, and we're going to have 100 to a couple hundred people on the farm, little kids. We've got people bring their pets. We've got dogs as well. We need to make sure that we can see underneath all of our trees because that is where snakes will want to be. They like to hide in there. So number one, we want to see the snakes. Number two, we want to make sure that we can see and remove sucker growth as soon as possible. And I will tell you, every single year, most of our citrus trees wind up with some sucker growth on them. And if you guys don't know what sucker growth is, you have all of our citrus trees, if you bought them in a nursery, are grafted varieties. So there is rootstock, and then they graft a scion onto the rootstock, usually a foot or two off the ground. So they'll graft it there, and then that's where your known variety comes from. So if you have an Arizona Sweet, the Arizona Sweet starts at that graft point and goes up. Any growth that occurs basically at that graft point is questionable for me. I remove it, but definitely below the graft point, any new growth there is rootstock, and you do not want that growing. The sooner you find it, the better. We have done we've done a few different consultations where folks have had a citrus tree. They're trying to figure out why they don't get good fruit off of it. Lo and behold, the tree is actually rootstock. Or they'll have a big, nice, beautiful looking tree. We get there and they're like, I don't understand why only half of this produces fruit. Again, it's rootstock. So the rootstock will eventually completely take over the tree. So another reason why we like to prune up maybe a foot or so past that graft point, so it's very obvious once we start seeing any of that sucker growth, we can easily identify it and quickly remove it. And it's usually just a matter of just pulling them off, especially when you find them really, really small. You don't even need pruners. You basically just snap them off. So that's really about it. Other than that, with all of our trees, we do remove dead, dying branches. You'll want to do that. If you get any severe crossing branches, especially as the tree gets older, you'll want to remove those. And we generally try to keep the tree fairly balanced. And so we are looking at that. If you guys have watched any of our citrus pruning videos, you'll see me walking around the tree in some of those. And that's just me checking to make sure that it's well balanced. But that's pretty much it. So if you're looking at when you're gonna want to prune your citrus trees, our recommendation here, and what we do ourselves, we typically prune late April, early May. So we're getting buttoned right up against that time frame. So that's about it. Oh, and then one last thing. Another advantage to pruning in the spring after fruit set is you can thin at the same time. So these trees, most of them, now some of them are alternate bearing, which simply means one year you have a heavy fruit set, the next you have very little, sometimes none. So if you have an alternate bearing heavy year, or it just naturally produces heavy, now is a good time to do the thinning. And so we do our thinning at the same time as we do our pruning. And of course, the pruning will help you with some of your thinning, especially lower on the tree. So there you go. So, and I did mention, if you're going to prune high, again, paint that trunk. Especially on a younger tree, you have to paint those trunks. More than once, we've been on consultations with dying citrus trees that still may be 10 or 15 years old. They're dying because there was very obvious sun damage that can sometimes take a few years to completely take the tree out. If you have a high trunk or it's a young tree, paint that trunk or protect it somehow. So again, you guys know we prefer the IV Organics, but protect it with something. If you want to just slap paint on there, that's fine. They've got that inexpensive trunk paint at Home Depot and Lowe's. Grab that stuff. Put something on there to protect that trunk and protect your investment. So, okay. All right. So, I'm done talking. I need a drink.
Okay. So, I've got citrus in Ventura, California. Is what you're saying applicable to me?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So, Ventura, actually very similar to us with your high temps. The advantage you guys have is it cools off quite a bit in the evening. So it's actually a little bit harder on the trees here, but really kind of the same idea there for you. Now, it would be about now. You should be on the same cycle we are as far as your fertilization is concerned. That usually is in the month of May, so it coincides with what we're talking about here. And your fruit set should be about the same time. So, most of your citrus is probably either flowering or set at this point would be my guess. So, should be about the same.
Yeah.
What else?
How big do the fruit need to be before adding organza bags?
So we generally, when we're using organza bags, we generally wait until the fruit is about to start ripening. Now, you can leave them on there for an extended period of time. We've done that in the past with our pomegranates. In fact, it's the only way we get a ripe pomegranate. Otherwise, birds and ground squirrels get to all of them. So, but we've left them on there all summer long. So, they can last a while, but the longer they're on there, the quicker they break down. There's some issues there. If the fruit is swelling, which they do as they ripen, and use a smaller bag, it could swell a little bit too much and you can't get the bag off. So that's a possibility. We had that happen with some peaches. We used to do that on some peaches, and we had them put them on a little too early and they swelled larger than the bag. And so we're cutting the bags off to get to the fruit. So generally speaking, we wait until a few days, if you can tell, a few days before they ripen, if you're going to be using organza bags. So, and they're fantastic, by the way. So I think the biggest challenge that you have with organza bags is that eventually some birds will figure it out, and ground squirrels definitely figure it out. So if ground squirrels are your problem, organza bags are not going to work. And we found that with our almonds last year. So we lost every single almond. It was very obvious that a ground squirrel went up there because they literally chewed through until they got to the kernel, which is the almond, and took the almond out, left the rest of the half sitting there for us, mocking us. So we got some different ideas there, but if you're going to use organza bags, is as close to ripening as you can. So, yeah.
We planted a peach 2 years ago. Last year it had grapefruit. This year it barely has 4 fruit buds. Is this normal? How to promote fruit growth?
So is it normal? Probably. So there's a good chance that it is. We have, with the exception of probably I think the Florida Prince is pretty consistent year to year, but our peach trees tend to be alternate bearing depending on the variety, and even those. Some trees will set heavier one year and not as heavy the other. Yes, there are things you can do. So the first thing is the right variety. So I don't know what variety you have. I'm assuming that you're here in Arizona. And so, if you got a Florida Prince or Early Grande or one of those varieties that's a low chill variety, chill hours can affect it. So, if you have a high chill peach tree here in Arizona, you're going to find that if you do get production, which you may, you'll find that it's not very heavy. So that could be part of it. Obviously, pruning is definitely part of the deal when it comes to peaches. Remember, your peaches set on last year's growth only. It's the only time you're going to get a peach set or a flower and a peach is on last year's wood. So if you don't have much of last year's wood available, then you're not going to get a lot of peaches. So, or it'll continue to get higher and higher up on the tree, which is pretty common as well. So pruning is important, and realizing that when you're pruning, so if you're pruning in the wintertime, realize that any new growth from last season that you cut off would have been production. So you need to keep that in mind. And here we do winter pruning. Last year we did a video. You can check that out. Actually, just this past season, this past pruning season. So a couple months back, we showed you how we're pruning a little bit differently on our established trees. Yours is still pretty young, but ours are 5 years old at this point, and we find that the production was getting further out on the tree and higher up on the tree. So we did some different pruning where we removed every other branch in the middle of the tree. We still got a nice heavy fruit set this year because we've had to do a lot of thinning. Still have some thinning to do. Mm-hmm. So we did a tremendous amount of thinning, and the trees look really, really good. So, but we didn't get we've had a lot more fruit set because, again, we thinned out every one of those branches.
Yeah.
And so even the thinning was a little bit easier because we didn't have quite as much to do. But
yeah,
that could be affecting it. Of course, fertilization, I'm assuming that you're fertilizing appropriately. So February, May, and September, use a good, fruit tree type fertilizer or, some good compost. We prefer composted manures, do really well. That can affect it. Make sure your watering schedule is on point. You want to make sure your irrigation, which should have started at least a month ago, is consistent week to week, especially, right at flowering and just past flowering. And then, other things can affect this. So, if you get a frost at flowering, that'll drop a lot of those flowers. You won't get a fruit set there. So, and I think I remember we got some frosts here right at about flowering on some of those trees. So if you wind up getting a frost while your tree is flowering, you could wind up with very, very little fruit set. So, and you didn't mention whether or not you had a lot of flowers and not a lot of fruit set, but that could affect it. And then, of course, we're talking about pollination. So, if you don't have a good amount of bee activity, because that's how peaches are generally pollinated, is bees. If you don't have good bee activity, you could have that as well. But it sounds like you've had good production in the past. So I'm assuming that that's not the case. So either way. So those are all things that could affect it. I may have missed some things. So, but those are all things that could have affected the production on the peach tree. And then, of course, the biggest thing is just see how it is next year. You've had one season, it was good. One season, it's bad. If next year it's good again and you didn't really do anything different, it's just an alternate bearing tree, which can be common. So, yeah.
Okay, so you once mentioned the bear's limes having an inherent problem, mm-hmm. and you advise going to Mexican limes for anyone getting a new lime. Mm-hmm. What is that issue? Anything to help with existing trees? Right.
So there's a chance, it's small, but there is a chance that an existing tree does not have the disease. It's possible. I want to say it's hearsay, but it's really not, because we've had this happen. It started happening on the old farm, so I don't know whether that tree is still up and running or not. And then we definitely had it happen here. And then we had somebody who is a citrus farmer, and they had mentioned that they had switched their crops out, and that there is a specific disease. It affects several different types of trees, but the bear's lime tree in particular, Persian lime, this particular disease runs pretty rampant in all of the trees kind of across the country, and it's very common to lose them. So, and there's really nothing you can do. It's a disease inside the tree. It existed there. was there before you got the tree, and it'll eventually kill it. But the person who sent it to us said, there were trees that would last 10 or 15 years before that happened, and most citrus only produces for 20 to 30 years. They can produce longer than that, but typically, that time frame. So you may not have an issue. And we, on the old farm, we were there for 5 years. That tree was in the ground for 5 years. The only thing that we started seeing were randomly branches started dying, which is exactly what happened to this tree here. So after seeing that, being told by a reputable source, they sent us pictures and everything, kind of went into all the detail of what this disease is. And I just don't remember what it's called. But apparently a very, very high percentage of trees have it. So it's more rare that you don't. And I don't know that you can do anything about it. So that's why we've switched. And that tree, which is 2 years in the ground, has its first fruit set on it this year, right? So, and of course, Mexican limes, key limes, they're nice, those cute little tiny limes. So, we're looking forward to those. Use them in, obviously a lot of our dishes and, in a drink on occasion.
Yep.
So looking forward to it.
Any new peppers growing on the raised beds?
Okay, you can answer that question. Are there any new peppers?
Not anything new that we haven't grown in the past. I did a couple of them are coming back from last year, and I did buy one new jalapeno.
Was it the jalapeno gigante? The big jalapenos? The giant jalapenos?
I can't remember.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so too. It was funny. We last year, and it could have just been labeled wrong because leave it to nurseries, right? So last year we buy two new jalapeno plants. One of them was a traditional regular jalapeno. The other one is like the gigante,
mammoth,
the large.
I think it was called.
Yeah. So we plant them, and we leave the little label or the little stake in there, so we remember which one's which. And lo and behold, the traditional one was the larger of the two. Both of them were good size, though.
Yeah.
Right. But and they were massive, like almost the size of some of the store-bought ones, which we've never gotten before. So
it makes you think that the tags were switched. It's like, how can it not be?
I think the tags had to have been switched because it was consistent too.
Yeah.
But what's pretty cool, so we had some really good frost this past winter, and those plants were doing great until they hit that frost hit, and then boom, they were done. I think we were also letting the turkeys out at that time, and the turkeys, for whatever reason,
like to climb in those beds,
and they break branches off. But
yeah.
So they were back. They were down to nubs, and both of them are coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
But
no new. Sorry to interrupt. No new peppers, but we need to. If you guys have some suggestions, can you email us some suggestions on good peppers to grow? Something is wrong with, and I'm not going to say something's wrong. Well, there's a lot of things wrong with me, but so you guys know we changed our diet about a year ago. Won't go back. It's wonderful. And one of the things that has really changed is our appetite for spicy.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
I've always loved spicy, but I used to get heartburn like crazy anytime I ate even salsa or Mexican food or anything, and now I'm not getting that. And so so we are like hot sauce on everything.
So it was funny. So we didn't have Mexican food. Austin basically grew up without Mexican food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much how it was. And yeah, your heartburn was extensive. And
Yeah.
so, you don't get heartburn at all anymore.
I haven't gotten it in I can't remember.
Over a
last time
year?
I got it. Probably over a year.
Over a year. And so, but yeah, we're on the spicy kick. And what happens with spicy, when you start eating spicy, you start needing more spicy. You build up this tolerance. And so the jalapenos are great, but, some of the little extra kick wouldn't hurt. Not too much, though. I don't want habaneros might not be a bad idea.
And it's funny, when I bought the one jalapeno one, I saw some other peppers. I'm like, should I get some other ones?
Yeah,
I'm like, well, I know jalapeno, so we'll just stick with that.
I think you might need to.
I might need to.
Yeah, might need to. So it's late, but we could drop one in there still.
Okay.
Yeah, we got space. Yeah.
Will you enable channel membership someday?
I don't know. That's a good question. I suppose we could. I think one of the main reasons that we haven't done that is anytime. So if we're going to ask for money, we want to make sure we're providing something for said money. So we want to make sure we're providing a service for that, because I don't know. I'm a believer in I'm a capitalist. And so I believe in, fair exchange. And so I think there needs to be a fair exchange. And so one of the challenges that we have is bandwidth, and not internet speaking. time. So we just don't have time. I'm starting to work from home, but I'm still working when I'm here. So in fact, I work more now being home than I did going to the office. And so, which is just my personality. And of course, we do the same thing with the farm. Evenings and weekends, we're busy on the farm, right? So we just don't have a lot of time to dedicate to anything. In fact, we were just talking about here, YouTube. So, one of the things about our content is it's unique. It's not unique and not unique. Don't get me wrong there, but it's really kind of geared towards a specific audience. It's you guys. So it's people here in Arizona or people in desert environments that are doing some of the things that we're doing. We learn a lot of things and share a lot of things with you guys. But that market's pretty small. Worldwide, 25% of people live in the desert. That's not the percentage here in the United States, and so which is the bulk of the YouTube audience. And so we spend a lot of time to produce content for you guys, and we don't mind doing it. And we've done it for the last 8 years, going on 8 years. And so, but it takes a lot of time. And so we may you don't see that we post as often as we used to. We used to do a couple days a week and these other things. It's one of the reasons we do this now with a podcast, so we can still stay in touch with you guys, because this is a lot easier than doing regular content. And so I think that's the biggest reason why for me is, I don't want to ask somebody for money without giving them something for it. And we'd want to be able to, do an additional podcast or produce additional material for you guys for a member. We'd want to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And we don't have the bandwidth to do it. So I just don't think it would be fair.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't seem fair to me. So
yeah.
That's the honest
answer. We want to be able to, be offering additional perks
Yep.
to it. Do you have any white mulberries, or are they all red?
So we do, and we have 2. They're on the back of the farm. We bought them. One of the reasons we sell mulberry trees now is because we bought them as white Pakistan mulberries, and they're very clearly not Pakistan mulberries, but they are white mulberries, some type of Persian mulberry. So they're about an inch or so max long, maybe a half an inch wide, and they're very plain.
Yeah.
So although they did make a fantastic wine, the wine was really good.
It was
Shockingly good. I was surprised how good it was. But we don't get a whole lot of production off of them, and fresh eating, they're really not all that good. And so we haven't gone any further than that. So answer your question. We do have 2 of them. They're nice large trees. So it's a beautiful large tree. The tree on the old farm is massive. And that's why we have them back there. But we don't really go after the production on those trees. So that's why.
How do I correct the curled yellow leaves on my potted citrus?
That is odd. It almost sounds like you're overwatering if they're yellow. So if you're getting curl and yellow, it sounds like that. Too much moisture can definitely do that. Obviously, you can have some issues with rootstock and the soil if it's in a pot. One of the challenges that we have here with any potted plant, and especially with a potted tree, is you have to really balance the moisture in that tree, and it's very, very difficult to do. One of the things that we've done here is we've gone to concrete pots. It kind of goes in. I don't want to go off into too much of a rabbit trail, because you guys know I can do that like quickly and easily.
Yeah, we know.
But one of the reasons we have concrete garden beds and we use concrete pots is concrete is actually a fantastic insulator. So everybody thinks of concrete that you're walking on, it's very hot. That's true. But we found that not only our garden beds, if you've been here, you've seen them. If you looked at them now, they're all fantastic. It's an excellent insulator. And so we've gone almost exclusively. We only have a handful of potted plants. Our roses are the main potted plant now. They're all in concrete pots. Number one, they last forever. It's a fantastic insulator. And we found that it balances the moisture retention, also the heat. So those would be important. Make sure it's citrus trees need a lot of sunshine, and they do not like their feet wet. And so at the same time, you can't have fast draining soil because they also can't dry out. And so that really is it. It's always a challenge with citrus in a pot to keep that moisture consistent, especially in Arizona, because of our hot, dry weather. It's a lot easier to manage that in a pot when somebody's got it in another state where maybe citrus doesn't grow well and it's not always outside and they don't have the super, super hot and dry. So you're going to be challenged with water. So my guess is it's that. It could be an issue of fertilization. Make sure you're using a granular fertilizer because a liquid fertilizer will drain out of the pot way too fast. You're going to need to water pretty often, if not every day in the middle of summer. And but again, you got to balance that. So a moisture meter might not be a bad idea, especially since you're having this problem. And then let me know what kind of soil you're using. We use just a straight potting soil in all of our plants, and generally it works fine. But that could be your challenge as well. So it could be a couple things there.
So we have Marianne that has her Cara has dead branches, that it has always struggled.
Well, we've had that happen with our Cara as well. So that might be, part of that might be the variety, because that happened this winter, remember? You may not, the Cara, remember there was a whole, the front of it was basically empty, had to cut out some dead branches. Do you remember that at all?
No.
So it is very moisture sensitive. We're noticing that too. So you obviously cut off the dead branches. It should come back. So ours did. It came roaring back here in the spring. But I made the mistake of cutting back on water, and we got pretty warm and dry this winter. Too much. And that tree was the first one that was affected. The first one. Out of all those different citrus trees that we have, that was the one that got most affected.
Is there still hope for my Pakistan fruit to ripen? Lots of green fruit, but no ripe fruit.
So the answer is yes. Ours are still basically green as well. Most of them have fallen. So we had an incredible fruit set. If you guys watched our video from last week, I got a shot. There was literally hundreds and hundreds of fruit on every single tree. Well, I was out of town, but we had basically a haboob come through.
It was,
so
crazy winds.
Real heavy winds. It blew almost all of them off. Mm-hmm. So there was almost no fruit left on it. And so, but I saw them back there. There's a little bit of red on one. One had some red and a little bit of dark. Most of what's left is still green. So everything's a little bit late, except for the Shangri-La. Because the Everbearing is typically producing by now, and it has not produced yet. No. The Black Pakistan's not ripe yet. Last year, it was ripe at this point because it was ripe for the farm tour, which is happening on basically the same day. And the Shangri-Las have been ripe for 2 weeks.
Weird.
Yeah, really odd. I think it's because we had that really, really warm winter, and then boom, it got cold really fast, and then warm again. Trees don't do good with that stuff, generally speaking.
So have Keith that has a Cara that was 14 years in the ground, died after this last fruit set.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a bummer.
That stinks.
Yeah.
Have a couple of suggestions on peppers, and then I have a navel orange that flowered like crazy, but most of the flowers dropped off. It's a 3-year-old tree and a good size. Have the issue with my all-in-one almond.
So
probably having the same issue.
Yeah. So a couple things. Number one, citrus takes a couple years before it will hold and set fruit. So it could simply be that the tree is not mature enough yet. And there's not really a specific number of years where a tree becomes mature. It's like any other animal or plant. It's mature when it's mature. So it's probably just that the tree is not mature yet. We see that as well. Typically, it takes a couple years before citrus will set fruit. So it could be that. You said it was 3 years old. The almond tree, same thing. Typically with almonds, you won't get a heavy fruit set until year 4 and beyond. And that's pretty consistent. So we didn't see much of anything until year 4, which was last year. And then this year it's got a nice fruit. They've got nice fruit sets on them as well. So, but yeah, it's probably just that. The only other issue that it could be is some type of stress on the tree. So, make sure, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, citrus is an evergreen. It always needs moisture. So unless you're getting heavy, consistent rain during the wintertime, you need to irrigate. And you can overwater a tree. We may have had an example earlier, but it's hard to do, especially if you're going to use like a wood chip mulch, something like that, and you're watering infrequently. Give them a lot of water. You need a nice deep soak once a week, sometimes twice a week in the middle of summer. So, but make sure that's consistent. And then, of course, fertilizing. Make sure you do fertilize. You want to have a higher nitrogen fertilizer, generally speaking, with citrus. So just a citrus fertilizer would be fine. So just make sure you're doing those. Is that Pam?
Yes.
Pam.
Hi, Pam.
Hi, Pam. Thank you for the super
you.
chat.
So Mars said that a fair exchange would be that channel members get early access to video uploads.
All right. Yeah, that would definitely be one. Could do that. I'm sure there's a way to set that up. So, yeah, could do that. Could do that.
We just have to try to be ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, which is always a challenge.
And not rushing Friday to get a video posted for Sunday.
Yeah, I know. Well, it takes editing, right? And then you've got a lot of work to do.
I know.
Got to squeeze that in. So.
Okay, recently bought a key lime 3-gallon pot, 3 feet tall. How often should I water in the summer, and any tips on getting it through this summer? Yeah,
so I mean, really, we've done some videos on tree planting. We did some citrus tree planting. You'll see that in our video archives. If you guys don't already know, we're pretty diligent about putting all of our videos into playlists. So if you haven't clicked on our playlists on YouTube, you can find that on YouTube. Click on citrus, and then you'll find planting videos in there. So just take a look at that. It's not really all that different from everything else that we do. In fact, we have a video of planting a citrus tree. One of our better videos, actually, that's done really well. It's been on irrigation, but we were planting a small citrus tree about that same size. And you'll see that we planted basically the same as everything else. There's really not any different. So you definitely want to get it in the ground. If you haven't done it already, you're kind of late. Now's kind of the cutoff. By the time we're done through next weekend, the middle of April, end of April, you're pretty much done. So you need to get that in the ground quick. But make sure, watering away from the tree, closer for the first couple months to make sure the root ball stays wet, but away from the tree to encourage outward growth. Nice heavy mulch, not rocks, not rocks, not rocks. Some type of woody mulch. So either, like a chip drop kind of thing from an arborist, or buy the pretty stuff at Home Depot or Lowe's. But it has to be some type of mulch like that can help to maintain moisture, lower the temperature of the soil that little tree is growing into. So all those things are going to help you out. And paint that trunk.
Yeah.
Make sure you paint that trunk. So, what else? Are we caught up? Are we early?
So Kevin had mentioned to avoid overwatering his potted plants. He uses a water meter and doesn't water until the meter shows it needs it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a good one for potted plants.
Definitely.
Will you be making mulberry syrup?
No. So we are, so we're not keto, but we're very low carb. So we started doing that about a year ago. And it's been a challenge with our winemaking because
A lot of sugar.
It's a lot of sugar, and which turns into alcohol. And last year, we just botched almost every batch of wine last year. Either failed or just didn't turn out good. And so
we tried to cut sugar.
It's because we tried to cut the sugar. We're not going to do that this year. But generally speaking, we cut sugar out of our diet almost completely. And I'm not going to speak for you, but I feel fantastic. And so I won't go back. And so that would be one of those. And it's been we've been challenged a little bit because, we have a lot of fruit trees here. By the way, over 200. Lori did a count with Gala this week, and we got over 200 fruiting trees, vines, and shrubs here now. So I got to change my whole spiel. It's not 180, it's over 200. But we've got all these fruit trees, and that's a lot of sugar. So fruit is our only exception. We really don't have sugar of any kind, carbohydrates in the diet, generally speaking, at all. And so we definitely won't be taking the fruit and adding sugar to that. So we wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
unless it's our cheating day, then we will have some sugar.
Cheating meal.
Yeah.
So, but we don't do all day long. Goodness gracious. Cheating meal last night was good though.
Yeah,
that was
it
good.
was.
Yeah.
And we had dessert too.
We did. That was way cheating. Actually, honestly, a mulberry jam would be a lot better than what we had last night.
Okay, so I missed your commentary on shading citrus trees with shade cloth in the summer. Is it necessary in Arizona?
No. So it's not. Now, if you're not going to plant them and irrigate them the way we do here, maybe it might be the wrong rootstock. So a citrus tree with a poor rootstock, yes. If you're planting really late, so you're planting into May, you might need to. But again, you're not going to get the most amount of growth out of the tree. Those trees need full sun all day long, no shade whatsoever for your citrus trees. So yeah, ideally no. People do it still, and that's fine. If you want to shade your trees, that's cool. We never do, and we don't lose trees to the sun. We just don't. So there you go.
What's the best pomelo that grows in Mesa, Arizona?
I think the Chandler pomelo is the only one that we've ever grown. So if you're gonna go, I'm sure there's other varieties, but the Chandler pomelo is the only one that we've ever found. So I only have experience with that. And the Chandler pomelo, pomelos can be a little frost sensitive, so you want to be cautious with that. But you're in Chandler. Where did I said
Mesa.
Chandler. Close, right next door, and it's a Chandler pomelo. So it kind of fits, right? Shouldn't you put a Chandler pomelo? If you're on the east side of town, shouldn't it be a Chandler pomelo anyway? I mean, hello.
Oh my goodness.
It was named after the town right next door.
So I just Googled it. What is the best variety of pomelo? And it said Chandler.
Okay. Yep. That explains why it's about all you find. So,
Yeah.
And I think that the one thing with pomelos, we're still trying to figure out when they ripen. They don't look ripe ever, really. Or really when they do, they're dry. So, and traditionally, pomelos are kind of like a gift, especially in some Asian cultures. They're a gift during Christmas time or that December time period. So we've always thought, okay, that's when you harvest them. Well, it's way too late. So, I think it's going to probably be like November timeframe, I'm guessing. So we're going to start harvesting probably October to kind of see if we can get some more juice inside there because they've been dry. So I find that pomelos are a bit plain. So because, grapefruit has that bitterness to it. And so you're expecting that. And there's a little bit of that, but it's more sweet. And so they can be pretty plain. I like them. I think they're good. And because they're essentially a grapefruit or similar to a grapefruit, you have that bitterness, which can have some health benefits to it. So I think, there's a lot more to that particular fruit besides just the fact that they're impressive. I mean, and expect a large tree. That is our largest citrus tree easily. And of course, it makes sense. That tree has to support a fruit that is literally this big, and I'm not exaggerating. Am I exaggerating? I'm not exaggerating. I know I'm not exaggerating. They're massive. So, yeah. All right.
Well, now I'm just reading on pomelos. So pomelos have a higher zinc, potassium, and copper content, while grapefruits are rich in magnesium and calcium.
And the zinc would make sense because of that little bit of bitterness in there. Well, but that's also true of grapefruit. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. All right.
Anyways, what is your favorite variety of pomegranate?
Probably the Granada. So because it's always got darker areoles. So the areoles in the wonderful pomegranate can be a little bit light. Sometimes, and especially and really late. So I think they're really good. The Angel Red was not bad. Didn't have a strong flavor. And we haven't had the Parfianca yet. So that one's new for us. So those are the only ones that I've tried.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot of different varieties. So it's.
Yep, but those are the four we have. So we have Granada, Angel Red, Wonderful, and Parfianca. And the Parfianca is the only one that I haven't tried yet. So, but out of the three, the Wonderful, Granada, and Angel Red, I like the Granada the best.
I think we are caught.
What? We're actually early.
That.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have been great today. So, hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. We'll get to a last couple questions here if we can. But we have an event next weekend. So if you guys are coming, we'll see you in a week. If not, that's okay. We'll still plan on being right here. So assuming we can get done with all that stuff and in the house in time, we should still be here because we are here every week, right? Saturdays at what time?
2:00 Arizona time.
That's right. So at 2:00 Arizona time, we'd love to see you guys here. If you guys have any questions, content for this podcast, it really is centered around you, and we get that from questions that you guys ask us. A lot of times I wind up going back into old YouTube comments or comments on old videos, because those have a tendency to be relevant, especially this time of year. But we try to keep it relevant to you. Love being here and having you guys here with us. So again, next Saturday at 2 o'clock Arizona time, maybe the next time you see us. This was the Desert Farmer Podcast, episode 52, here in April. So any other questions? Any last minute questions?
Yeah, so Mars said, if you were to plant mint anywhere on the farm, where do you think it would be most prolific?
Funny you should ask. So we have planted mint near the house. We have planted mint in pots, and we now have mint in neither of those two places in our end caps with our garden beds, and they are doing fantastic. They're massive. We got the chocolate mint in October, right? Struggled a little bit because one of our dogs tried to dig it up. Didn't do much all winter, and now it's exploding. So we've got them there. That is in basically our garden bed soil, and it's like perfect for them. But we've had them in other areas on the farm, and they do okay. The biggest thing is they can use a lot of water, so they pretty much need daily watering. So we put them next to you have the drains for your AC. We had them over there. Problem we had is animals could all get around it, and so we lost those, and then we had to hand water that. So it was on the side of the house. We just forgot. So
the one over here, we had our like little area that we had our banana, and now we have the three. It's actually the 5-in-1 tree. We had that mint by the fence. Mm-hmm. It's all coming back, yeah.
Yeah. So they are kind of they're like little zombie plants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll take over an area in a heartbeat. So we put them in the end caps so they're not into the beds because we don't want them taking over the beds. Now, could that thing still weasel its way in there? It could, but we've got it in 2 spots. All good?
I think so.
We are awesome. Well, again, just want to thank you guys for joining us today. This was the Desert Farmer Podcast, episode 52. We will see you guys next week. Just want to thank you again for being here. The most valuable thing that we have here on the planet is time. You guys choose to spend that with us. We do not take it for granted. So this is for you guys. Just want to thank you for being here. Wonderful questions here today. And we will see you next time on the Desert Farmer Podcast. But until then, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere,
so can you.
That's right. Bye, guys.
Bye.